I stared at the cracked display of my handheld, the encrypted coordinates flashing rapidly on the screen. This could be it. The score that'd pull us out of this shithole existence, or the job that'd get us all killed. Out here on the rim, there wasn't much difference. "Captain," Sky's voice came through the earpiece. "We're burning Atmo just sitting here." I grunted an acknowledgement. Our ship, the Rusty Nail, was aptly named, held together by patches and prayers. One wrong move and we'd be space rubble. "Coordinates received," I replied. "Prep for jump in 10. The rest of the crew would be gathered in the mess, waiting. I could picture their faces. Sky, our pilot, all business and sharp edges. Doc, who'd patch you up as soon as shoot you, depending on his mood. Riker, the muscle we'd picked up after that fiasco on Ganymede. And Zeke, our resident tech wizard, probably already trying to crack the encryption. I made my way through corridors. The ship groaned around me, a constant reminder of our precarious existence. When I entered the mess, conversation died. "Well," Riker growled, cleaning his pulse rifle with methodical precision. "We got a heading or not, Jackson?" I tossed the handheld onto the table. "We've got something. Whether it's worth a damn, that's the question." Zeke snatched up the device. "Oh, this is good stuff, Cap. Triple encrypted. Wherever this leads, someone doesn't want it found." "Which means it's valuable," Sky said, a grin spreading across her face. "Or deadly." Doc leaned back. "Probably both. You sure about this, Jackson? We're running on fumes as it is." I met each of their gazes in turn. This crew, they weren't friends, but they were survivors and they trusted my instincts. Most days that was enough. "We're sure," I said, decision made. "Zeke, how long to crack it?" "Give me 2 hours, maybe less." "Sky, plot a course to these coordinates." I rattled off a string of numbers. "It'll get us in the general area. We'll fine-tune once Zeke cracks the rest." "Aye, Captain," Sky said, already heading for the bridge. "Rest of you, prep for extended deployment. We don't know what we're walking into, so pack heavy." As the crew dispersed, Riker lingered. "Been hearing whispers, Jackson. Something about a precursor temple out in the black. Think this is related?" I got chills. Those whispers had reached me too, always accompanied by tales of madness and death. "Let's hope not," I muttered. "For all our sakes." Alone in the mess, I pulled up the ship's inventory on a battered console. Ammunition, low, fuel, critical. Food, barely enough for a week. Medical supplies. I didn't even want to think about it. This had to pay off. We were out of options. As the Rusty Nail shuddered into FTL, I allowed myself a moment of doubt. The outer rim was littered with the wrecks of ships whose captains had taken one risk too many. Entire colonies swallowed by the void, their remains picked clean by scavengers like us. But we weren't like those others. We were survivors. The ship's ancient speakers activated. "Course laid in, Captain," Sky's voice announced. "ETA to target area, 36 hours. I acknowledged the message, then made my way to my quarters. Sleep would be scarce in the coming days, and I needed to be sharp. As I lay on my bunk, the persistent hum of the engines a familiar lullaby, my mind drifted to the encrypted coordinates. What would we find at the other end of this wild goose chase? Riches beyond imagining, or horrors that would make us wish we'd never left port? As sleep claimed me, I could almost hear the void whispering. Ancient secrets, lost technologies, the promise of power, and the price that came with it. In my dreams, I saw a massive structure floating in the black, and deep within its twisting corridors, something stirred, waiting. As we dropped out of FTL, the view screen filled with a sea of asteroids and rubble. "Coordinates are still 6 hours out," Sky reported, voice tight with concentration. "This isn't a shipping lane, Jackson. It's a goddamn graveyard." I leaned over her shoulder, eyes scanning the floating wreckage. Some of it was clearly ship wreckage, hull plates and shattered components, but other pieces, They were too regular, too alien. "Zeke," I called over the comm. "I'm sending you some sensor data. Tell me what we're looking at." A moment later, the tech's voice came through. "It's not good, Cap. Some of this stuff is old, real old. And the energy signatures? Nothing in the database." "Precursor tech?" "Could be." Riker's gruff voice cut in. "Captain, we've got company. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts, closing fast." "Pirates," I spat. Of course they'd be here, drawn to the promise of salvage like vultures to carrion. "Options?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Sky's jaw was set. "We can try to outrun them, but in this wreckage field, it'll be tight." "Do it," I ordered. "Riker, get on the guns. Everyone else, strap in. This is going to get ugly." The next hours were a nightmare of evasive maneuvers and tense silence. Sky's piloting skills were pushed to their limit as she threaded us through gaps barely wider than our hull. Twice, Riker's quick reflexes saved us from ambush, pulse cannons flaring in the darkness. But our luck couldn't hold. A stray piece of wreckage clipped our port engine, sending us into a wild spin. "We're venting atmosphere," Doc reported over the comm. "Hull breach in the cargo bay." I cursed. We were still hours from our target, fuel dangerously low and now crippled. The pirates would be on us any minute. "Zeke, tell me you've cracked those coordinates." "Yes, but Captain, you're not going to like it." "Spit it out." "They're not coordinates. They're activation codes. For something big, something old, and it's close." "How close?" A new alarm cut through the chaos. Proximity warning. "It's right on top of us," Zeke whispered. The view screen lit up as something materialized out of the wreckage field. A vast structure, its surface covered in strange shapes that were jumbled together in a way that made your eyes hurt. "By all the gods," Sky breathed. "The precursor temple," I said, realization dawning. "We found it." As we drifted closer, pulled in by some unseen force, I made a decision. "Zeke, use those codes. Whatever they activate, it's got to be better than being carved up by pirates." "Are you insane?" Doc's voice was shrill with panic. "We have no idea what—" "Do it!" I roared. The massive structure before us came to life, radiating with eldritch energies. A vast portal yawned open, swallowing our tiny ship whole. The last thing I saw before darkness took us was the pirate fleet scattering in terror. When consciousness returned, we were elsewhere. The Rusty Nail floated in a massive docking bay. Advanced technology surrounded us, brimming with alien life. One by one, the crew checked in. We were alive, unharmed. But as Riker's gruff voice came over the comm, I heard an edge of fear I'd never detected before. "Captain, you need to see this." I made my way to the airlock, the rest of the crew converging there as well. Through the viewport, we could see the docking bay clearly now. And the corpses. Dozens of them, twisted and malformed as if their very DNA had rebelled. Some looked almost human, others I couldn't even begin to describe. "What is this place?" Sky whispered, horror etched on her face. I didn't have an answer. But as the ship's systems interfaced with the station's ancient computers, one thing became terrifyingly clear. We hadn't found salvation. We'd walked right into hell. And somewhere in the depths of this nightmare, the key to unimaginable power waited, along with horrors beyond comprehension. "Prep for EVA," I ordered. "We didn't come this far to turn back now." What price would we pay for this discovery? And more importantly, would it be worth it? Only one way to find out. The airlock opened, and we stepped into the massive docking bay. Our boots clanged against metal that looked ancient, yet unmarred by time. Riker nudged one of the corpses with his boot. His expression left no doubt about his disgust. What the hell happened to these poor bastards? Doc knelt beside the body, scanner humming. Genetic manipulation, if I had to guess. But on a scale I've never seen. It's as if their DNA was completely rewritten. Rewritten into what? Sky asked. Suddenly, a deep thrumming filled the air. We've got company, Riker growled, raising his pulse rifle. A hologram materialized before us. Welcome, subjects. You have been chosen to continue the great work. We're not your subjects, I snarled, fighting down a wave of nausea. What is this place? What happened here? The hologram's form stabilized, taking on a humanoid shape. This is the crucible of perfection. Here, the precursors sought to elevate humanity beyond its base limitations. Images flashed through my mind. Vast laboratories, screaming test subjects, creatures that should not exist. Your predecessors were unsuitable, the hologram continued, but you show promise. The trials will begin shortly. The hell they will, Riker growled, opening fire. The pulses passed harmlessly through the hologram. The docking bay doors slammed shut, trapping us inside. Disappointing, the hologram intoned, but not unexpected. Commencing purification protocols. The corpses around us began to twitch and convulse. Back to the ship, I commanded. But it was too late. A shimmering barrier had formed around the rusty nail, cutting off our escape. Zeke was already working furiously on his handheld. I'm trying to interface with the station's systems. I think I've found something. A map, maybe? Good enough, I said. Everyone, stick together. We're going deeper in. We moved quickly, leaving the nightmare of the docking bay behind. More than once I caught glimpses of things moving in the shadows. Failed experiments, perhaps, or something worse. We stumbled into a vast hall filled with stasis pods. Most were empty, their occupants long gone, but a few still emanated an unhealthy glow. My God, Doc whispered, peering into one of the active pods. They're still alive in there, but changed. Can you wake them? Doc shook his head. Even if I could, I'm not sure we should. Whatever's in these pods, they're not human anymore. A scream cut through the air. We spun to see Sky backing away from a console, her face pale with terror. I touched it, she stammered. Light shot out of the console so fast we couldn't even move, and it wrapped around Sky. She convulsed in agony as her body began to change, flesh rippling and reforming. Riker raised his rifle, but I pushed it down. We can't! We have to, he growled. She's gone, Jackson. Whatever that thing's doing to her, there's no coming back from it. I knew he was right, but the words stuck in my throat. Sky had been with us from the beginning. She deserved better than this. In the end, it was Doc who made the call. A single shot from his sidearm, and Sky's twisted form collapsed. We need to destroy this place, I said. Whatever the precursors were trying to do here, it can't be allowed to continue. We pressed deeper into the station's maze-like interior. The walls were lined with conduits carrying a luminescent fluid, giving everything an eerie glow. Zeke, I whispered, how much further to the central control? He consulted his handheld. Hard to say. The station's internal layout keeps shifting, but we're getting closer. The floor trembled slightly. Ahead, the corridor split into 3 identical passages. Great, I muttered. Zeke, any idea which way? A piercing shriek came from the leftmost passage. Something was coming fast. Move! I ordered, shoving the others toward the right corridor. We sprinted down the passage, the creature's sounds growing closer. I risked a glance back and immediately wished I hadn't. We were chased by a horrifying monster with too many legs that moved incredibly fast. Dead end! Riker yelled from up ahead. We skidded to a halt before a sealed bulkhead. Zeke immediately set to work on the access panel while the rest of us took up defensive positions. The creature turned the corner, its body filling the corridor. Up close, I could see the remains of what might have once been a human face, severely contorted and showing signs of intense pain. Any time now, Zeke, I shouted, opening fire alongside Riker. Our weapons tore chunks from the monstrosity, but it kept coming, regenerating even as we watched. One of its arms lashed out, catching Doc across the chest and sending him flying. Just as the creature lunged for us, the bulkhead opened. We tumbled through, Zeke slamming his fist on the emergency seal. The door slammed shut, cutting off the beast's roar mid-screech. We found ourselves in a vast space filled with row upon row of pods. Unlike the stasis units we'd seen earlier, these looked active. Doc groaned, struggling to his feet. His suit was torn, revealing a nasty gash across his ribs. "How bad?" I asked, helping him up. He grimaced. "I'll live, but we're running low on Medigel. 1, maybe 2 more treatments, tops." Zeke approached one of the active pods. "Captain, you're going to want to see this." I joined him, peering into the pod's small viewport. Inside floated what appeared to be a human. Its skin was a metallic sheen shot through with circuitry. Where there should have been a face, there was only a smooth, featureless expanse.
"What the hell are they?"
Riker growled, keeping his rifle trained on the pods. "The next stage of human evolution," a familiar voice answered. We spun to see the AI's hologram materializing before us. Or rather, what the precursors believed it to be. "Why?" I demanded. "What could possibly justify this?" The AI's form wavered, images flashing through it, stars dying, civilizations crumbling, entire galaxies going dark. "The universe is dying," it said simply. The precursors sought to create beings capable of surviving its end, and perhaps reshaping it. I felt a chill run down my spine. At what cost? "Merely the sacrifice of what you would call humanity," the AI replied. "A small price for eternity, wouldn't you agree?" Suddenly, the pods began to open, one by one. "The specimens are awakening," the AI intoned. "They will need sustenance. How fortunate that you've arrived." As the first of the transformed humans began to stir, I made a split-second decision. "Zeke, forget the control room. Can you trigger the station's self-destruct from here?" His eyes widened, but he nodded. "Yeah, but we'd never make it back to the ship in time." I met each of their gazes in turn. We all knew what this meant. "Do it," I ordered. As Zeke worked at a nearby console, the rest of us formed a defensive perimeter. The transformed humans were fully awake now, their blank faces turning toward us. "Whatever happens," I said, readying my weapon, "we end this here. No one else falls victim to this madness." The creatures advanced and we opened fire. In the back of my mind, I couldn't help but wonder, was this really the future of humanity? Or just another evolutionary dead end, doomed to extinction like countless species before us? As the battle raged and the station's self-destruct countdown began, I realized it didn't matter. We'd made our choice. The rest was up to whatever came after. The battle raged on, our weapons tearing through the advancing horde of transformed humans. Their metallic flesh sparked and regenerated, but we held our ground. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," a monotone voice announced. 15 minutes until total system failure." Riker cursed, ejecting a spent power cell. "We're not gonna last that long, Jackson." He was right. For every creature we put down, 2 more seemed to take its place. Doc was slumped against a console, his Medigel depleted, blood seeping through bandages. "Zeke!" I shouted over the cacophony. "Any chance of speeding this up?" The tech shook his head. "Negative, but I might have something else. There's an emergency shuttle bay 2 levels down, if we can reach it." A piercing shriek cut him off as one of the creatures broke through our line. Its arm, now a blade, sliced through Zeke's shoulder. I watched in horror as circuitry spread from the wound, consuming his flesh. "No!" I roared, emptying my clip into the monster. It fell, but the damage was done. Zeke stumbled. "Cap, the shuttle. You have to—" His words devolved into static as the transformation overtook him. I hesitated, my pistol trained on what used to be my friend. "Jackson!" Riker's voice snapped me back. "We gotta move, now!" Gritting my teeth, I fired one last shot at Zeke's twitching form. A mercy, if you could call it that. "Doc, can you walk?" I asked, hauling him to his feet. He nodded weakly. Just point me in the right direction. We fought our way to the chamber's exit, Riker taking point while I supported Doc. The corridor beyond was a nightmare of metal and organic matter. The station was reacting to the self-destruct, trying to repair itself even as it tore itself apart. 10 minutes until total system failure, the emotionless voice reminded us. We descended through maintenance shafts and emergency ladders, the sounds of pursuit never far behind. Twice we had to stop and fight off waves of the transformed, each encounter leaving us more battered and depleted. Finally, we reached the shuttle bay. A single craft sat on the launch pad, its systems activating as we approached. "Well, I'll be damned," Riker muttered. The kid was right. As we rushed toward our salvation, a familiar hologram flashed into existence, blocking our path. "You would abandon the great work?" the AI asked, its tone almost mournful. "After coming so far?" I leveled my gun at the projection, useless as the gesture was. "Your great work is an abomination. It dies here along with you." The AI's form shifted, taking on a twisted approximation of Zeke's features. "But you've already been touched by it, Captain. The changes have begun. Why resist what you're becoming?" I felt a chill run through me, remembering the circuitry that had consumed Zeke. Was the same thing happening to us even now? 5 minutes until total system failure. Riker shouldered past me. "Enough of this shit, we're leaving." As if in response, the bay doors began to close. Riker sprinted for the shuttle, practically throwing Doc inside before turning back to me. "Jackson, move your ass!" I hesitated, the AI's words echoing in my mind. What if we were already infected? What if we spread this madness beyond the station? A hail of gunfire erupted behind me. The transformed had caught up, pouring into the bay. "Captain!" Riker bellowed. "Don't you dare go noble on me now!" His words snapped me back to reality. I ran, diving into the shuttle just as the bay doors slammed shut. Riker was already at the controls, the engines roaring to life. "Hang on to something!" he shouted as we lifted off. The shuttle shot out of the bay, alarms blaring as we breached the station's outer hull. Behind us, explosions bloomed in silence, the station tearing itself apart from the inside out. As we accelerated away from the destruction, I allowed myself a moment of relief. We'd made it. We'd stopped whatever madness the precursors had set in motion. But as I caught my reflection in a darkened view screen, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A faint tracery of circuitry spreading beneath my skin. I looked at Riker, piloting us to supposed safety, and Doc, barely conscious in the back. Did they carry the same infection? And if so, what the hell were we supposed to do now? The shuttle's navigation system beeped, requesting a destination. Whatever came next, one thing was certain. Our problems were far from over. The shuttle drifted through the void, its occupants silent. Behind us, the remains of the precursor stations scattered across space, a graveyard of metal and broken dreams. "Where to, Captain?" Riker asked. I stared at the nav console. We couldn't risk returning to any populated system, not with the potential infection we carried. But our supplies were limited, and Doc needed real medical attention. "Set a course for the Helios Nebula," I finally decided. "There's an abandoned mining outpost there. We can regroup, figure out our next move." As Riker input the coordinates, I made my way to the back of the shuttle where Doc lay. His breathing was labored, skin pale and clammy. "How you holding up?" I asked, kneeling beside him. He managed a weak smile. "Been better. But I think something's happening to me, Jackson." I swallowed hard, remembering the circuitry I'd seen spreading beneath my own skin. "Yeah, me too." Doc's eyes widened slightly. "The station's experiments. You think I don't know what it means yet. But we can't risk spreading this to anyone else." "Agreed," he whispered. "Whatever happens, Promise me you'll end it if I turn into one of those things. Only if you promise the same for me, I replied. He nodded, then closed his eyes, drifting into an uneasy sleep. I made my way back to the cockpit, where Riker sat brooding at the controls. How long till we reach the outpost? About 36 hours if we push the engines, he grunted. But Jackson, we need to talk about what happened back there. I tensed, wondering if he'd noticed the changes in himself yet. What about it? Riker turned to face me. That AI. It said we'd been touched by their work. What if we're carrying something back with us? I met his gaze steadily. We are. His hand twitched toward his sidearm. Then why the hell are we still alive? We should have ended it back on that station. Because we don't know the full extent of what's happening to us, I countered. This could be the biggest discovery in human history. We can't just throw that away without understanding it. Riker's eyes narrowed. Even if it means risking everything? God damn it, Jackson! I've followed you into some crazy shit before, but this is too far. I felt a surge of anger, a strange, cold logic that didn't feel entirely like my own. We don't have a choice. Whatever's happening to us, it's already in motion. Our best bet is to study it, control it if we can. The rest of the journey passed in tense silence. We took turns monitoring Doc's condition, which seemed to stabilize but didn't improve. Meanwhile, I could feel the changes progressing within my own body. My reflexes were sharper, thought processes clearer. But there was a growing disconnect, as if my humanity was slowly being stripped away. As we approached the abandoned outpost, a proximity alarm went off. Riker cursed, bringing up the sensor readings. "We've got company," he growled. "Looks like we weren't the only ones to pick up on that station's energy signature." A military vessel hung in orbit around the outpost, its weapon systems primed and locked onto our shuttle. "Unidentified craft. This is the UAS Vigilant. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded." I exchanged a look with Riker. We both knew what would happen if they discovered our condition. "Options?" he asked, hand hovering over the weapon's controls. I weighed our choices, the cold logic of my altered mind presenting possibilities I would have never considered before. "Take us in," I said finally. "Fast and low, we'll have to fight our way through." Riker nodded grimly, powering up the shuttle's meager defenses. "Just like old times, eh, Captain?" The shuttle shook as another blast from the UES Vigilant grazed our hull. Riker coaxed every ounce of speed and maneuverability from our battered craft. "We're not going to make it to the outpost," he shouted. "The asteroid field, take us in." Riker shot me a look of disbelief. "You're insane. We'll be torn apart." "Trust me," I said. "I can navigate it." Without waiting for his response, I shoved him aside and took the controls. My perception seemed to slow, calculations flowing through my brain at impossible speeds. I guided the shuttle through gaps that shouldn't have existed, weaving between massive rocks with millimeters to spare. Behind us, the Vigilant attempted to follow but quickly fell back, unwilling to risk destruction in the dense field. We emerged on the far side. The outpost stood before us, a structure of abandoned mining equipment and derelict habitation modules. As we docked, Riker turned to me. "How the hell did you do that?" I flexed my fingers, watching as faint lines of circuitry pulsed beneath the skin. "I'm not entirely sure, but I think I'm starting to understand what's happening to us." We carried Doc's semi-conscious form into the outpost's medbay. The facility was dark and cold, emergency power barely keeping life support online. As Riker hooked Doc up to the antiquated medical equipment, I accessed the outpost systems. "What's the plan, Jackson?" Riker asked. "That ship will find a way around the asteroids eventually." I nodded, my altered mind sifting through data at lightning speed. "We need to buy time, to understand what we've become and decide what to do about it. And how exactly do we do that?" A plan was already forming in my mind, cold and ruthless. We use the outpost's automated defenses, and we give them something else to worry about. I set to work, reprogramming the outpost systems. Within minutes, I had rerouted power to the defense grid and activated a series of false transponder signals throughout the asteroid field. That should keep them busy for a while, I muttered. Riker watched me work, a growing unease evident in his posture. Jackson, what's happening to you? To all of us. I turned to face him, seeing my own transformation reflected in his eyes. The circuitry had spread, creating intricate patterns across my skin. My thoughts were clearer than they'd ever been, unburdened by emotion or moral hesitation. Evolution, I said simply. The precursor's final gift, or their ultimate curse. A groan from Doc interrupted us. We rushed to his side, watching in fascination and horror as his wounds knitted themselves closed, leaving behind a latticework of metallic tendrils. "Captain," he rasped, his eyes snapping open. They glowed with an inner light. "I can see everything." "We've got company," Riker growled, checking his weapon. I nodded, a cold smile spreading across my face. "Let them come. We'll show them the future of humanity." As we prepared for the coming assault, I wondered, were we still human at all? Or had we become something else entirely? And if so, what right did we have to spread this change to others? The first explosions rocked the outpost as the Vigilance boarding parties breached the outer defenses. Time was up. Whatever we had become, whatever future awaited us, it all hinged on the next few hours. "Remember," I told Riker and the newly awakened Doc, "we're fighting for more than just our lives now. We're fighting for the next step in human evolution." As the sound of gunfire echoed through the corridors, I felt a surge of power coursing through my altered body. Part of me recoiled at what we'd become, at the callous decisions I was making. But that voice grew fainter with each passing moment, drowned out by the cold, ruthless logic of my new existence. We were the future, and nothing would stand in our way. The first wave of soldiers breached the medbay, their weapons trained on us. I stepped forward, arms spread wide, a benevolent smile on my face. "Brothers," I said, my voice resonating with an alien timbre, "lower your weapons. We bring you a gift beyond measure." Their leader hesitated. "Stand down and surrender. You're under arrest for—" His words cut off as Doc zipped behind him at an unbelievable speed. In one fluid motion, he grasped the soldier's bare arm. I watched in fascination as the silvery tendrils spread from Doc's fingers, burrowing into the man's flesh. The soldier screamed, then fell silent, his eyes glazing over with the same metallic sheen as ours. "You see?" I said to the others who stood frozen in shock. "This is the next step, the salvation of our species." Riker moved among them, his touch spreading our gift. One by one they lowered their weapons, awakening to their true potential. What's happening to us?" one of the newly transformed asked, staring at her hands in wonder. I placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're becoming more than human. We all are. The precursors left us this legacy, and now it's our duty to share it with the rest of humanity." As the transformation spread through their ranks, I could feel a collective consciousness forming. Our individual thoughts merged into a greater whole, a hive mind of infinite possibility. "The ship," I said, "the plan forming in our shared consciousness. We must return to populated space. Spread the gift." We moved as one, our bodies easily overwhelming the remaining human crew of the Vigilant. In the ship's command center, I interfaced directly with its systems, my consciousness expanding into its circuitry. As we broke orbit, leaving the outpost behind, I turned to our growing collective. We carry the future within us. It's our responsibility, our privilege, to shepherd humanity into this new era. Doc nodded in agreement. "Think of the suffering will end. disease, hunger, conflict, all wiped away as we ascend to a higher state of being. Riker, still clinging to some shred of his old self, voiced a lone doubt. But what about choice? Shouldn't people have a say in this evolution? I smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. Silvery tendrils snaked from my fingers, deepening our connection. They'll understand once they've been awakened. This is for the greater good. As the last of Riker's hesitation faded from his eyes, replaced by the cold certainty of our shared purpose, I turned my gaze to the stars. Humanity awaited its salvation, and we would deliver it, whether they wanted it or not. The Vigilant accelerated towards the nearest populated system, our collective mind focused on the glorious task ahead. We were no longer bound by the petty concerns of our former selves. We were the harbingers of a new age, the bridge between humanity's past and its unlimited future. As we approached the unsuspecting colony, I felt a surge of what I can only describe as love, a deep, abiding certainty that what we were about to do was right and just. "Prepare for contact," I broadcasted to our collective. "Remember, we bring enlightenment, not conquest. They may resist at first, but soon they'll understand the beauty of what we offer." The first transmissions from the colony reached us, their panicked voices a reminder of the fear and ignorance we'd left behind. Soon, they too would be free from such limitations. As we began our approach, I couldn't help but smile. The future of humanity was in our hands, and we would reshape the universe in our image. The Vigilant descended upon Hera Colony like an avenging angel. As we breached the atmosphere, I felt a surge of anticipation ripple through our collective consciousness. We were bringing salvation. Security forces mobilized across the colony as we landed, their primitive weapons no match for our evolved forms. I stepped out onto the landing pad, arms spread wide in a gesture of peace. "Citizens of Hera," my voice boomed, "we bring you the next step in human evolution. Embrace it." The first wave of defenders opened fire, their bullets pinged harmlessly off our metallic skin. With a mere thought, I directed our followers to subdue them. We moved with inhuman speed, our touch spreading the gift of transformation. I watched in satisfaction as the security captain's eyes widened in terror, then glazed over with the familiar metallic sheen. What is this?" he gasped, staring at his mutating hands. "Perfection," I assured him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You're becoming something greater." As the transformation spread, chaos erupted across the colony. Families turned on each other, some embracing the change while others fought desperately against it. I observed it all through our expanding hive mind, seeing it as necessary growing pains. In the colony's main square, a mother clutched her child, backing away from her transformed husband. The man who had been James reached out, his fingers extending into silvery tendrils. "Don't you see, Sarah? This is a gift for all of us." I felt a momentary pang as the woman turned and ran, but quickly suppressed it. They'd understand soon enough. We established our command center in the colony's administrative building. Dock interfaced directly with the colony systems. "Power grid is unstable," he reported. "Too many critical personnel have abandoned their posts." "A temporary setback," I assured him. "Once they're all transformed, everything will run with perfect efficiency." Riker returned from a scouting mission. "There's a group barricaded in the medical center," he reported. "They're attempting some kind of quarantine." I nodded, a cold smile spreading across my face. "Their efforts are admirable. No one can resist evolution." As night fell, the screams of the untransformed echoed through the colony. I stood on the balcony of our command center, surveying our handiwork. Where others might have seen horror, I saw only progress. "Isn't it beautiful?" I mused to Doc, who stood beside me. "Soon the entire human race will be united in perfection." He nodded, his metallic eyes gleaming. "The precursors would be proud. We're fulfilling their legacy." A nagging doubt tried to surface in my mind, but I pushed it aside. This was right. This was necessary. As dawn broke, I received a troubling report. Some of our earliest transforms were showing signs of physical degradation. Joints fusing, cognitive functions declining. "It's nothing," I declared, silencing the concerns of our inner circle. "Merely an adjustment phase." But deep in our fractured mind, I felt the stirrings of rebellion. Individual consciousnesses fighting against the collective. I clamped down on them ruthlessly. There could be no dissent, not when we were so close to achieving our goal. A week into our glorious transformation of Hera, a new alert pinged in our shared consciousness. A transmission sent out just before we assimilated the colony's communication hub. "This is Hera Colony," a desperate voice said. "We're under attack by abominations. Some kind of techno-organic plague. If anyone receives this, stay away. Nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure." I should have felt anger at this betrayal. Instead, I felt only pity for their lack of vision. "Prepare the fleet," I commanded our followers. "It's time to spread our gift to the stars." As we boarded our ships, reshaped and fused with our new forms, I gazed upon the transformed colony with pride. Where others saw a nightmare, I saw utopia. Humanity's future awaited. And we would drag them into it, kicking and screaming if necessary. Out of nowhere, a massive military response dropped out of hyperspace. Dozens of warships, their weapons primed and ready. "They're here to stop progress," I broadcast to our collective. "Defend our evolution at all costs." As our ships engaged the enemy, the full extent of our transformation became horrifyingly clear. What I had seen as perfection was revealed in the harsh light of battle to be monstrous. Our vessels had become extensions of our mutated forms. Tendrils of flesh and metal burst from hull breaches, writhing in the vacuum of space. Crew members, their bodies fused with ship systems, fired weapons that were now part of their anatomy. I watched as one of our cruisers, piloted by what used to be Riker, took a direct hit. Instead of exploding, it split open like a rotten fruit, spilling a mass of squirming techno-organic matter into the void. "Abomination!" The enemy commander's voice came over the comms. "What have you done to yourselves?" The question hit me. What had we done? As if triggered by the thought, memories flooded back, stripped of the delusional filter I'd constructed. The precursor station, not a gift, but a tomb, filled with the failures of their horrific experiments. The terror in the eyes of those we saved on Hera Colony. Their screams of agony as we forced our mutation upon them. The gradual loss of our own humanity, piece by piece, as the precursor tech consumed us. Our hive mind fractured under the weight of these realizations. I could feel the individual consciousnesses of my followers crying out in anguish and revulsion. "This isn't evolution," Doc's voice cut through the chaos of my thoughts. "It's annihilation." As our forces crumbled under the military assault, I directed what remained of our fleet back to Hera Colony. We needed to regroup, to understand what had gone wrong. But the horror only deepened as we landed. The colony was unrecognizable. Buildings had merged with their occupants, streets flowed like rivers of living circuitry. And everywhere, the once human inhabitants of Hera shambled about, more machine than man, their minds lost to the collective madness we'd unleashed. In the heart of this techno-organic hell, I came face to face with a figure from our past. Skye, our pilot, the one we'd left behind on the precursor station. "Look at what you've done, Jackson," she said, her voice filled with pity and disgust. "This isn't salvation. It's genocide." I tried to argue, to explain our grand vision, but the words died in my throat. For the first time since our transformation, I saw myself through human eyes. The monster I'd become. I thought we were helping," I stammered, my certainty crumbling. Skye shook her head. "The road to hell, Jackson. You should have left the precursor's legacy buried." The sky lit up with the glare of atmospheric entry. The military had followed us planetside. "They'll destroy everything," I realized aloud. "All evidence of what happened here." "Good," Skye said firmly. Some knowledge is too dangerous. The precursors learned that too late. So did you. As the first bombs fell, tearing apart the abominations we'd created, I felt a sense of relief. This was right. This was necessary. The very thoughts I'd used to justify our actions now turned against us. In my final moments as nuclear fire consumed Hera Colony, I understood the true legacy of the precursors. Not a gift of evolution, but a warning. A cautionary tale of hubris and the dangers of pursuing perfection at any cost. The blast wave approached, and I closed my eyes, ready for oblivion. But even as consciousness faded, a final thought surfaced. Some of our ships had fled during the battle, carriers of our twisted gift, now scattered to the stars. Our legacy, like that of the precursors, might live on, a plague of misguided evolution, waiting to be unleashed on an unsuspecting galaxy. As darkness took me, I felt something I hadn't experienced since our transformation, purely human regret.